My name's Andy Curry. I'm the SSTL Launch Campaign Manager, and I'm going to give a very quick 10-15 minute presentation on our recent launch campaign activities out at Baikonur Cosmodrome. So let me just check this is going okay. We were out at the Cosmodrome to do the spacecraft preparation work on our 5 rapid-eye spacecraft that we've just finished building. So this is a contract we've got with MDA, as I said, to build the five spacecraft. I'm going to give a quick introduction to the launch vehicle, to the Cosmodrome, and then we'll go into the actual Cosmodrome activities that we went through. So we signed a contract for the launch a couple of years ago now with a company called Cosmodrome. I'm afraid I don't have a pointer, but for a dedicated launch on an SS-18. The SS-18, it's a Russian ICBM silo launch. It's their mainstay intercontinental ballistic missile, NATO codename Satan. And the purpose of the Russians giving us these missiles is that at the end of their military life, they decommission them and hand them over to peaceful purposes for space, which is obviously a good idea for us. Excellent, cheers. So as I said, the Dnipro program, the Dnipro rocket, it's an SS-18, ex-Russian military. It's processed and reconditioned by a company called KB Yuzhnoye in the Ukraine, and this is the launch that we're going to be using for this mission. We've got 5 spacecraft. I thought I'd quickly show you how we actually fit them into the launch vehicle. The Dnipro launch vehicle is quite adaptable in that it has these 2 platforms. There's a top flat platform and there's a bottom platform, and what we're going to do is that we're going to mount 2 spacecraft onto the top and 3 onto the bottom. And so when in orbit, the fairing will come off at quite a low altitude. They will then separate one spacecraft on the top, then the next one, then separate this upper platform, and then release the final 3 spacecraft. So there's a quick introduction to how you get 5 spacecraft onto a Russian missile. The Cosmodrome. We're going from the Baikonur Cosmodrome, which is in south of Kazakhstan. It's an interesting place because it's Russian territory inside Kazakhstan. So there's an interesting visa situation of getting in and out of there, which often causes rather a lot of problems for us. So the launch will actually go south. The first stage drop zone is in Turkmenistan, thank you, it's just about there. Second stage drop zone off the coast of Somalia, hopefully clear of ships at the same time. There's another launch site that the Cosmodrome use for the Dnipro launch vehicle, and this is from Yasny. They've had a couple of launches there on the Bigelow missions, and they're just about to launch Theos, which is an Astrium spacecraft for Thailand, and that's going from Yasny. And our future spacecraft, Deimos 1 and UK DMC2, will launch from Yasny this December. But at the moment, we're going from Baikonur Cosmodrome, flying south with the second stage drop zone off the coast of Somalia, and the actual spacecraft separation from the launch vehicle over the equator, just south of Somalia. From Yasny, if you were going from Yasny into sun-synchronous orbit, then the drop zones can either be in Kazakhstan or one of the other stans. Sorry, it's written in Russian, can't read it. So the Cosmodrome, the town of Baikonur was built from absolutely nothing during the 50s by the Soviet Union, and then all around, all north of Cosmodrome, of the town, are all the launch sites. The one we're using the Dnieper silos is at Site 109. For many of you who know the Baikonur Cosmodrome, you've got the Gagarin 1 pad just about there. You've got the other Soyuz pad where SSGL launched GOVA Christmas 2005 at Site 31 over there. And you'll see some pictures of the facility that we've been using to prepare the spacecraft, and that's also at Site 31. Years ago, we had a Facet Bravo TMSAT launch on a Zenit. That was from Site 42, which is just over here. It's not actually shown on this map. Previous Dnieper launches that we've had were also from Site 109, and that was USAT 12 in 99, and also Chungsat in 2000. So there's a quick introduction to the Cosmodrome. Right out here are the proton pads, and scattered around here are all the old silos for all the Russian ICBMs. So here's the start of our campaign. Means we have to ship stuff out. Normally we send the whole shipment out by commercial cargo plane. It goes up to Heathrow, some of it gets lost somewhere, but eventually it ends up at Baikonur via Moscow, and it all goes by normal commercial cargo plane. This time, our customer, MDA, wanted us to ship it in a consolidated shipment in our own plane. So here we are, one nice Antonov, I believe it's a 112, arrived at Stansted. It was all loaded on and taken to Baikonur Cosmodrome via quick customs checkout in Moscow. This desolated place you see here isn't Stansted. This is actually the Baikonur Cosmodrome. So the team that went out there, we had 5 spacecraft to prepare and to fill. We actually took 9 SSGO engineers out. There was 2 representatives from MDA, Joe and Larry, and there's also the Vladimir Kainov, the Cosmotras representative. There's a representative from Roscosmos and the translator from Cosmotras, and also Nina, who is our representative, Russian representative, who works for CST in Moscow. So 11 technical people were out there to do the checkout of 5 spacecraft. First job when we get to the launch campaign, unpacking. And the team, everybody rolls up their sleeves and gets on with the job. One of the important points here is to ensure that all the, it may sound a rather petty point, but Russian customs are quite strict in this matter, and they insisted on checking the serial numbers of absolutely everything, that they matched up with the serial numbers that we'd actually given them on the shipping list, right down to the printer, the coffee machine, everything. And if they didn't match, luckily they did match, we weren't allowed to unpack it. So the first job on the first morning there was to take everything out, lie them all in front of the crates, and allow the customs officer to check all the serial numbers. If anybody's doing a launch campaign in Russia, you need to spend your time making sure this is correct. Next job was to clean everything. Everything was clean, scrubbed before it went into the clean room. Don't want to start taking dirt into the clean room. So the clean room facilities we had here, this building is the Site 31 is a Soyuz assembly facility, which is where they take the fairing after they've mounted, in our case, GOVA. They would have done the same for GOVB and also Meteop. They load the spacecraft into the fairing, transport it to by train, and we had a couple of these very nicely refurbished rooms that we used for general storage and allowed for Cosmodrome staff to come in and take pictures and such like. Very good facilities, all recently been refurbished by Cosmotras. I've got a couple of pictures of the spacecraft testing. Unfortunately, electrical testing, as a mechanical engineer, I regard as unbelievably boring, so I've only got 2 shots of this, and we'll go on to something more interesting. But here's one of our chaps, Steve, shining a light onto the solar panels, and the guys here testing the spacecraft out. So this is our setup scenario that we go through, that we do at a Cosmodrome when we test a spacecraft out. What we don't have, what some people have, is a control room upstairs somewhere with everything, with all these computers and everything being fed down. No, we do it all next to the spacecraft, next to where we can see what's going on. Makes everything much easier at a Cosmodrome. Here's a second picture of a spacecraft being tested. We've got one of the solar panels removed because one of the first jobs we need to do at the Cosmodrome is to reconnect the batteries. The lithium-ion batteries we ship in a reduced charge state. We then connect them up and do the battery reconditioning. We took all our own equipment out, all our own gas. Here's some of the guys lifting the spacecraft up using the crane. We're about to mount the spacecraft onto this filling rig, which is actually mounted onto 3 scales. The spacecraft propulsion system used a xenon system, and what we do is that we actually measure the mass increase of propellant that we load onto a spacecraft, and we do that by these three scales. Here's another picture of the propulsion filling and the clean room setup. You can see some of the spacecraft, 2 of the spacecraft being checked out here in their setup. And here's the propulsion filling ground support equipment. There's a propulsion filling cart there. With xenon, we need to use a compressor and a Haskell pump to enable us to pump up to the required pressure. And you can see the compressor that we took out with us off to one side. So there's the setup in the propulsion filling clean room. And here's just another quick picture, just proving that I don't just do management and walk around in a suit. I actually get my hands dirty. He would do the main filling and the work, and there would always be a checker, myself, to ensure that everything was connected up and the whole procedure went through as it should have done. Quick introduction to where we stayed on the Cosmodrome. We did the Cosmonaut Hotel. It's called the Cosmonaut Hotels because before they have the cosmonauts go into space, they all stay in this hotel. They don't stay in the expensive Sputnik next door. They stay in the nice old Russian hotel. And before they go into space, they all sign the doors. So you can actually go through seeing all the cosmonauts who've gone up over the years to either Mir or to the space station, and look at all their signatures on the hotel doors. They've also got, I don't know if anybody's been to Baikonur Cosmodrome, but they've got an avenue of trees. So every cosmonaut who goes into space, you can see the tree that they've been built, that they've had grown for them. The oldest one is for Yuri Gagarin, who's the first person into space. Quick couple of pictures around the town. Most Russian towns have a statue of Lenin standing there saying, look at my lovely town. This town is obviously Baikonur special. They have a full-size old Soyuz stuck in the middle of one of their high streets. And here's a picture of one of our team just testing out some of the VIP toiletry facilities. And you can see there's a river in the background that cuts Baikonur off from the rest of the desert. Outside the town, it was pretty barren. You've got the something river, sorry, I can't remember the name of it, goes from east to west, goes from somewhere in the Himalayas, ends up in the Aral Sea, and it is completely, except for the river, it is almost completely barren. And outside the town of Baikonur, there's a large Kazakh encampment because they're not allowed inside the town because the town is Russian territory. And every morning we would quite often be delayed as all the shepherds and herders brought all their cows, cattle, camels and everything all across the main road. We were quite fortunate to have one morning off. I gave the team a morning off while we were there, and we had a tour of the Soyuz launch pad. This is the Gagarin 1 pad, and they've also got where they launched a Sputnik in 57 and Gagarin in 61, and there was a small monument to Sputnik here. The Soyuz Gagarin 1 pad is where they still do all the manned launches. It's quite an amazing structure. it would seem the man-launched rocket doesn't have a very advanced control system, and what they have to do is that after they've mounted the launch vehicle into this large structure, they then have to rotate the whole thing around and point it in the direction they want to fire it, which I found quite quaint. Yeah. I couldn't see the signs for London, Washington on the ground, but I'm told that they were there. The Starsem launch vehicle that they use has a slightly better control system and doesn't on a different pad, and that pad doesn't actually turn around. But this one, the whole thing turns around, and we actually watched it turn around while they were doing some testing. Obviously, lots of team photos when we finished the work. 5 spacecraft and the SSTL team. Unfortunately, we were missing one of the guys because he was actually in hospital. He was bitten by a particularly ferocious mosquito and had to undergo an emergency operation. Their operating theatres are quite interesting. I'm glad I didn't have to stay in there too long. But poor Mick, who did the propulsion filling, is missing from this picture because he was actually in hospital. Luckily, he'd finished all his propulsion filling before I let him be ill. So I think that's almost the last photo. The next stage. What we did in the first stage is that we went out to Baikonur Cosmodrome and we did the preparation, electrical, mechanical and propulsion filling on the 5 spacecraft. We've then left them there because the next stage because there's a large gap, there's about a 4 or 5 week gap between the next stage. The next stage we'll go out there a couple of Mondays time. We'll fly out to Moscow on the 11th. We'll then go down to Baikonur on the 12th. We then do the integration of the spacecraft onto the SHM called Spacehead module. There's some autonomous testing that KB Yuzhnoye need to do to the SHM before it's rolled out to the silo. And then there's about a 8-9 day gap between the silo rollout and the actual launch on the 29th. So a couple of weeks' time, I'm off there. Is there time for a question? No question. I've answered everything. Good. That's what I like. Thank you very much.